Stop struggling alone with English. Join us today, hit subscribe, and let's flow to fluency together.
Okay, let's dive in. Have you ever found yourself in that situation? Someone asks you something, maybe it's in a language you're still learning, or, even just a tricky question at work, and poof, your mind just goes totally blank.
Oh, yeah. That feeling.
Right. That really frustrating moment where you want to answer, you really want to engage, but the words, or maybe even just understand what they said, it just evaporates.
Completely stuck.
Well, if that sounds familiar, if you felt that stuck feeling, then this deep dive is definitely for you. Today, we're looking at a really insightful personal story. It comes from day 11 of something called a 30-day English-speaking transformation journey.
Sounds interesting.
It is. It's a powerful little story about one person's small but actually really significant breakthrough in communication. And our mission today, it's not just to tell the story. We want to unpack it, pull out the key lesson about how we actually communicate, and see how just a simple shift in how you approach things can lead to pretty profound results.
And not just in learning English, right?
Exactly. Not just language, but pretty much any interaction you might have. Okay, so let's really get into this feeling first, that initial wave of maybe panic when someone puts you on the spot like that, especially with a new language or maybe like complex jargon you're not used to.
It's almost universal, that feeling.
It really is. And it leads to that urge, doesn't it, to just get through the conversation quickly, minimize the awkwardness or the chance of making a mistake.
Absolutely. I know I felt that pressure, just wanting the interaction to be over.
Me too. Like wishing for a trap door sometimes.
Right. And it's a very common response. What's interesting neurologically almost is how that panic often makes us fall back on automatic responses, things we've memorized.
Like a script.
Exactly. Our brain, when it feels under pressure, it sort of defaults to efficiency over, genuine connection. We stop really processing what the other person is saying.
You're not really engaging.
Not genuinely. You're often just running that pre-programmed reply. It's almost like a social fight or flight. But instead of fighting or running, you kind of freeze into that rote answer. It's like a shield.
A shield.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it obviously stops any real connection because you're stuck in repeat mode, not receive mode.
Precisely. You're performing, not participating.
That's a really important difference, isn't it? Automatic versus deliberate. And the story we're looking at today, it hinges right on that point. The person in this journey, let's call them the participant,
Okay.
they were really open about their old habit. They said they'd usually just blurt out really fast, "Fine, thank you," and then try to end the conversation right there.
Like pulling down the shutters.
Totally. A clear picture of someone just trying to avoid real engagement, probably because of that anxiety we talked about. And I think a lot of us can probably relate to wanting to sidestep that discomfort.
No, absolutely. And it's not just language learning, is it? Think about, say, a new team member in a big meeting. They get asked a complex question. Instead of really listening to understand the details, the pressure might make them jump to a prepared answer they think fits, just to sound like they know what they're doing.
Or even in personal argument, maybe.
Exactly. You might only be listening for a gap to jump in with your point, rather than actually trying to understand where the other person is coming from. The listening is superficial in both cases, driven by fear or an agenda.
Not genuine reception.
Not at all.
So this cycle anxiety, avoidance, those quick impersonal answers, that was the pattern for the participant for, the first 10 days or so. You can imagine the internal chatter, right? Oh no, someone might talk to me.
The dread.
But then day 11 happened, and something changed. It wasn't dramatic on the outside, just a walk, seeing a neighbor they knew. But inside, a real internal shift was starting.
A turning point.
Yeah. The neighbor just smiled and asked that simple, everyday question, "How are you today?" Now, here's the thing. It wasn't some major confrontation. But right there, with that simple question, the participant made a conscious choice to break the pattern.
Instead of the automatic escape.
Exactly. Instead of the quick, "Fine, thanks, bye," they made this really deliberate internal decision. They literally told themselves, "No, listen carefully and reply."
Wow. That's simple instruction to
It sounds simple, but think about it. That's a huge act of self-awareness, right? Thinking about your own thinking and choosing to override that default reaction.
It really is. That's metacognition in action. And that deliberate pause, it does something crucial in the brain. It's not just about catching your breath.
What's it doing?
It's essentially calming down the threat response. When we're stressed, like in a new language situation, our prefrontal cortex, the thinking, planning part of our brain, can get overwhelmed. It defaults to those rote answers or avoidance.
Oh.
But consciously deciding to listen carefully, that re-engages those higher level brain functions. It lets the brain actually take in the information, the words, the tone, maybe even the body language before trying to respond.
So it resets the communication loop.
Exactly. It lets you respond thoughtfully, not just reactively.
And the actions that came next were just as simple, but just as intentional. They took a deep breath, actually looked the neighbor in the eye.
Made that connection.
Yeah. And then slowly, deliberately said, I am good. Thank you. How are you?
And the neighbor.
Just smiled back, replied, I'm fine too. A totally normal, simple exchange.
But for the participant,
It was, in their words, a big victory. Why? Because, as they put it before, I never really listened, I only repeated memorized lines. This time, they listened, they understood, and then they replied.
that's the key sequence. Listen, understand, reply, not just hear and repeat.
It's a complete shift in their whole approach to interacting with someone.
And what's really fascinating there is the move from just hearing sounds passive hearing to active listening, which involves understanding intent, context, maybe even emotion.
It's much deeper than just words.
Absolutely. It's building a real connection, neuron by neuron, you could almost say. It really shows why communication breaks down so often. It's usually not about lacking words, but failing to properly listen first.
Right. They weren't just waiting for their turn to talk. They were actually taking it in. And this is where it gets really good, I think.
Yeah.
Because the core lesson they took from day 11 seems so simple on the surface, but it's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
Good speaking starts with good listening.
Seems obvious, maybe?
Maybe, but we often don't do it, do we?
Yeah.
The power is understanding why we fail at it and how forcing ourselves to do it changes everything. The breakthrough wasn't about suddenly knowing more English words.
No, it was about the process.
Exactly, a completely different approach. When you consciously make that choice, okay, I'm going to really listen now, you give your brain the space it needs, time to process the question, figure out what's actually being asked.
And then it can put together a relevant answer.
Right. It gets you way beyond just spitting out memorized phrases or scrambling for what you think is the right thing to say.
Yeah.
It fires up those thinking parts of the brain we talked about.
Allowing for real engagement.
Yeah. And the advice from the source is so practical. Don't rush. Don't panic. Just pause, breathe, listen carefully, and then answer in simple English.
It's beautiful in its simplicity, and if you zoom out, this isn't just about language learning at all, is it?
Not in the slightest.
It's fundamental to communicating effectively in any situation. Think about it, a student trying to understand a lecture, a manager trying to get to the bottom of an employee's issue, even just trying to understand your partner better.
Mm-hmm.
In every case, truly understanding what's being said has to come before you can give a meaningful, helpful response. If you don't listen properly first, your reply is basically just a guess, yeah. Or worse, it could completely miss the mark and cause more problems. That intentional pause, that processing delay, it drastically improves the quality of your response. It's about being truly present in the conversation.
I get that. But I can also hear people thinking, okay, but what if people talk really fast? Or I panic because I know I won't understand every single word.
Those are absolutely valid fears. They're real.
They're often why we freeze up.
Yes, exactly. But the source addresses this head on. It gives this really comforting message. But that's okay.
Okay. How so? It highlights something important. You don't always need to understand everything. It says, even if you understand just one part, reply with something simple.
So focus on what you do get.
Precisely. It's like finding an anchor point in the conversation. Maybe you catch a key word or the general topic or even just the feeling behind the words. That's often enough to offer a simple, relevant reply.
That makes it less daunting. It's not about instant perfection.
Not at all. It's about building momentum, keeping the conversation going, even if it's simple.
Which brings up a really crucial point, doesn't it? How often do we let that fear, the fear of not being perfect, of not saying most brilliant thing, stop us from even trying?
All the time, probably.
This story is a great reminder that just making the effort, being a bit vulnerable maybe, is often way more important than trying to be flawless, especially when you're learning something new.
Like building a muscle.
Exactly like that. Every time you try, even if it feels clumsy, you're sending a signal to the other person and to yourself. You're saying, I'm here, I'm trying, and that often gets a positive response, right? patience, encouragement.
Yeah, people are often kinder than we expect.
They usually are. And that whole process, that willingness to be imperfect and just try, that's literally how you build communication skills. Step by sometimes awkward step. It takes courage to choose connection over perfect performance.
So let's just quickly wrap our heads around this key takeaway from day 11 again. We saw how making a conscious choice, a deliberate effort to really listen first, instead of just reacting with stock phrases or freezing up.
That's the absolute bedrock.
Yeah. It's the foundation for communication that's actually effective and, well, meaningful. It proves that better listening really does lead to better speaking, whether that's learning Spanish or figuring out a complex project brief or navigating a tricky family discussion.
From passive hearing to active engagement, big shift.
Huge. And the participant story showed us how just pausing, breathing, and actively listening turned a tiny everyday interaction into this big victory. Not just an English victory, but a connection victory.
A human connection victory.
Right. So here's something for you, the listener, to think about. Where in your life could this listen first, then respond simply approach make a difference? Maybe outside of language learning.
Could be anywhere, really.
Could be understanding a new idea at work, really hearing constructive criticism, or maybe even in those difficult conversations with people you care about, could listening more deeply first change things?
Allowing for more empathy, perhaps.
Exactly, allowing for real understanding. Just think about the potential ripple effects of that one simple but powerful shift in approach. And just as a little peek ahead for the participant in this source material, Day 12 involved them exploring things like using English songs and short videos.
Making practice fun.
Yeah, finding enjoyable ways to keep practicing that listening skill, keep building those connections we talked about, shows there are lots of ways to keep growing. The experience and the feeling, and